Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to The Imperfect Prophet.
Hey there. Welcome to another episode of The Imperfect Prophet with me, your host, Wonder Wendy. Another new backdrop. I told you that when last week's episode dropped, I would no longer be in Cape Cod. And I wasn't. I'm in Vermont. And by the time you see this episode, I'll be back in Arizona. But I want to share with you, again, where that whole memory thing, but from a slightly different angle. Last week, we talked about those memories in Cape Cod and how they are part of who I am and that feeling of welcome and interconnection that developed as an adult. Now we're going to go really far back because coming back to Vermont is where I was born and raised. Years of steeping. I'm a seventh generation Vermonter. So I think there's something genetically connected to me in this land here. And I drove around a great deal. The first day I was here, I went to meet a friend. It was a 45-minute drive. And I'd forgotten all the landmarks that I would pass on the way to visit her for brunch. And as I'm driving up the road, I see the house where a friend once lived. I see the parlor where I had one of my daughter's birthday parties. I see the church where a Ren Fair was held, and I participated in a reenactment, a little skit. I don't even know what you'd call it. But all of these things which were part of my life, the beach where I went as a child, and my father pulled me out of the water saying, "Your lips are blue. It is too cold for swimming." Hard to believe now that I've adjusted to the temperatures of Arizona. And once again, we're outside because I love being outside here. It's so beautiful. And I've got the dappled light through the trees. And you may hear the occasional vehicle passing by because we're not too far from the road. And earlier I heard a plane flying overhead and birds singing. So much going on here. Such a vital place. So hard to believe that at one point these were very quiet roads and how much the society has grown up around it. But I still have my cup of coffee. Some things never change. And I'll leave to your imagination what's in this cup of coffee, but I'm going to bet it's probably just a boring cup of coffee. So here we are in this place where I feel biologically connected to the countryside, the hills, the trees, styles of architecture, the animals. I saw deer and I even saw a possum. All these strange things that, we don't necessarily have in Arizona, or I don't see as often because I'm in the city. And this is where I had my childhood. And most of us have a place like that. Now, I know some people were raised with nomad type families for a variety of reasons, whether it was a business that moved them regularly or military service, or just that was their family's way. But I didn't have that. Like I said, seventh generation Vermonter. 7 generations of a family that started down on one side of my family in Roxbury, on the other in Dorset Hollow. And the family slowly migrated till my parents brought the family to Burlington, Vermont. And as I'm driving around on this idyllic, slightly overcast, yet still bright day, and the lush green of everything, because they've had a lot of rain, surrounds me. And I start looking at these beautiful old houses and thinking, oh, I want to live in an old house again. I grew up in a Victorian I still have a soft spot for Victorian houses. And as we look at these things, I'm thinking, I was driving alone. My brain was just running 100 miles an hour. Could I live here again? Interesting question. Could I live here again? Do I really want to live here again? Am I falling in love with a memory? Like that bad ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, depending on your perspective. The one who, when you broke up, you couldn't imagine ever spending any more time with them. They are toxic. They're awful. Time to move on. And yet, over time, those memories soften. And you remember that that person was a great dancer or a great lover or made your favorite cocktail or just knew how to massage that knot in your back. Something like that. Something that you pine for that maybe you're not getting currently in your life. So you get trapped in those memories and you start to think maybe you had it better then. And you start to think maybe I should go back. And you forget the reasons you left. The seduction of nostalgia is very strong. There's a filter that happens in our brain that helps us forget what was uncomfortable, hopefully. I guess not all people have that filter. I hope you have that filter. Because if you're dwelling on the pain of your life, that pain will hold you back. So let's go with that nostalgia and remember the good. But we don't necessarily need to go back. That might not be what's best for us, right? So the best example for me of forgetting the bad and remembering the good is childbirth. If we didn't have that filter that helped us cut out some of the bad memories and move forward again, people would never have more than one child. You do that once and take your uterus out with a spoon, a plastic spoon. But indeed, we have that filter. And instead of remembering the labor pain and the recovery pain, when you have a second kid, you go, oh, I forgot this. Oh my gosh, how could I forget that? And if you never had kids, talk to anyone who has, they'll tell you I'm right. And like I said, again, if you don't have that filter, please work on that filter because I'd love for you to remember the good in things and let go of the bad. That's the important part. But when you start to be seduced by the past and it starts to look better than your present, that's when you have to go, okay, what's changed? I had to remind myself, I was driving down this road on an idyllic weather day. The weather is absolutely perfect. Not too hot, not too cold, not too sunny, not too dark, not raining, occasionally turning on the windshield wipers because it might mist a little bit. It was ideal. In Vermont, there are not 365 days of ideal weather. There are far, far, far fewer. Between the snow, the ice, what we call stick season, that's after all the leaves have come down before you have snow, and mud season, that's after the snow is gone and before it turns nice. There's a lot of really cruddy days and a lot of gray days. We're pretty far north up here. And so sun is setting quite late and coming up quite early. You have these beautiful long days in the summertime. But in the winter, you can feel like a cave dweller. When I was in school, there were times I'd get up, get on the bus, get to school, and it was still dark. And then by the time I'd finished school and play practice, when I got on the bus, it was dark. So I felt like a cave dweller. It was absolutely ridiculous. And that's the reality of living in a northern climate, something I grew up with. Have to remind myself of that. Also, what's changed? That old Victorian house, which I thought was lovely, closets weren't big in that place. Bathrooms were small. And there weren't that many bathrooms. And we built our modern homes with a lot more conveniences than we had in those times. And yes, you can renovate, but that's expensive. As a matter of fact, the house I grew up in, last year I drove by and it had been gutted because that beautiful big old Victorian house didn't meet modern needs. And they're restoring the house so it will still externally look very much like the original house I grew up in, but I'm sure I would never recognize the inside when they're done. So the seduction of nostalgia, I couldn't go home again. That house is no longer the house I grew up in. It no longer houses those same fantasies. You have to ask yourself, does what the reality is still fit you? And what is that reality? Are you just looking at the dreams and the fantasies of what you once were? These are all good questions. So that romance versus reality. Now you see why I compared it to an ex. Is that remembered or real? You remember the beautiful days. You remember cuddling on a cold day. You remember a fireplace on a cold day. But then you also have to remember the days when you got frostbite or the days when you had a chill you couldn't shake. And if that doesn't work for you, don't let the romance seduce you. Just like that ex that used to make your favorite cocktail or knew that right place to touch. If they, fucked with your dreams, that's not the person for you, even though they had those good points. Look for another way to meet those good points. Find a good massage therapist. Hire them. Don't get entangled emotionally. Never make friends with your massage therapist, by the way. That's an aside. But as soon as you make friends with your massage therapist, it gets complicated because you're like, okay, this emotional relationship needs to stay over there when you're taking care of me. Just a point to the wise. So as we talk about remembered versus real, and that seduction of a memory. I had to remind myself, I have a really good life in Arizona. One that I'm looking forward to returning to, even though right now there's a little part of me that wishes I could stay in Vermont for a few more days and do a few more things. But I have a great life there. And I have people planning to see me tomorrow once I'm back in Arizona. And I have a full calendar and all sorts of wonderful things that I'm doing. That life fits me better right now, even though this romance feels really good. Remember several episodes ago, we talked about shoes and how a really comfortable pair of old shoes may be holding you in a position that aren't good for your posture, aren't good for your gait, and therefore aren't good for your body. They're really comfy old shoes. There's a familiarity to them. But it's time to let them go because they no longer serve you. And besides, they look like garbage and nobody wants to see that. We all imagine what it's going to smell like when you take them off. So please consider carefully what you hang on to from your past and whether it is actually serving who you are right now. The bucket list life is not about repeating the past. It's about living life with presence and purpose. Remember, passion, people, purpose. Those are what you want. And if you're chasing a self that no longer exists, that can become a full-time preoccupation and it can take you away from your actual goal. So consider carefully what you choose and what you're chasing. Carry the meaning of what you learned and the beauty of that romance forward with you, but don't try and live in it. You can honor your roots and not be bound by them. You don't live there anymore. It's time for a new beginning. It's time for a new place. Even though you can remember what shaped you, what brought you there, let go of the toxic bits. They're no longer there. And if they are still there, why are you holding onto them? Let go, move forward, and carry it like an old photo album that you go, this is who I was. Look who I am now. Look how much I've grown. Look what I've learned. This is what we pass on to the next generations, those lessons learned, those great great, great things. You don't need to move back. You need to live forward. That's the important lesson here. So over this next week, I would encourage you to write down one memory or share it with a friend or share it with family. Pick up the phone and call an old friend and say, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. And remember that time when now I'm trying to think, I've given you this challenge. Who would I call and what would I say? And I think it would be a college friend who I'll leave her name out of this just in case she is in the witness protection program for some reason, and say, remember that time when we were coming back from downtown and we went and played on the playground at the school that was on the way up the hill? Remember how much fun we had being little kids again in the darkness of the night, maybe after a couple drinks, and how much we experienced being free again. That's the call I'd make. Now, there was a little bit of scary part to that story. See, we're going to leave that one out because we don't need the scary part of the story. Although I know when I call her, if I call her, do I still have her number? I think she moved. We lost touch. It happens. I wish I could call her, but I bet she would remind me of the scary part. So we are not here to live the same life twice. We are here to live the wonderful bucket list life. Don't be seduced. The romance is great. Never forget the romance. That fire will warm your heart on the coldest day. But don't try to live it again because you can't. And you will have regret if you try and look back because you'll be missing out on what you're currently supposed to be doing. Be looking forward. Be aware of what's ahead of you, because I skinned my knee the other day because I was looking forward so intently that I missed that there were 2 steps down. I flew through the air. It was really quite dramatic. My daughter described it as seeing a mop of red hair fly through the air. She thought somebody had thrown a wig rack. We were in a clothing store. And I skinned my knee. It still hurts. It's getting better. So as I tell you to move forward, I also tell you to make sure your steps are careful and clear and you know where you're going. Until next week, don't live in the past, honor the past, but live the wonderful bucket list life. Moving forward, remembering who you are, but always looking for new opportunities. Next week, I'll be back in Arizona and we'll talk to you then. Have a wonderful week.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation. Ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called the Wonderful Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends. Join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.